Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhne.
Hello, everyone. We've got David Wachs with us today. And David has a very interesting business, which I'm sure you're going to be super excited to hear about. It's totally anti-technology, but utilizes technology. It's going back into sort of that personalization of marketing messages, which is sorely needed in today's market. So David is the founder and CEO of Handwritten. And David will be taking us through exactly what that is in a little while.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicholas.
So let's talk about Handwritten. I'm going to give a quick sort of summary of what I think, and then you can correct me and give me the proper elevator pitch in terms of how you actually sell this product. So Handwritten is what it says. It is personalized handwritten notes to customers, but using technology. So maybe you can give me the proper sales pitch in terms of what is it that your business does?
Yeah. So really what we do is we help our clients connect at scale with their customers using handwritten notes. So before, if you want to sit down and write a handwritten note, you can connect with one customer at a much higher connection rate than via email or text or anything else, but it's slow and hard to do and cramps the hand. But now with our company, we can help you scale that and really do it for you. And the way we do that is we use an army of 175 robots. We built those in-house. We custom design them and custom program them. Those robots all hold real pens. They're Pilot G2 ballpoint pens. And then they write out your note, customize it, and then we put it in an envelope with a real stamp and mail it on your behalf. So, the closest thing might be hiring a bunch of volunteers or hourly workers to write out cards for you. But the benefit of our robots is they're consistent in that they're always in the same handwriting style, although every note is a bit different, and they don't take breaks and they don't start screwing up after a while. So that's really what we do. The reason I got into this space, I've been in messaging broadly for 20 years. Prior to Handwritten, I had a text messaging company. And we sent 1 million texts a day on behalf of some of the largest brands in the United States. And I realized that electronic communication between text and email and Slack and Twitter, Facebook, all the rest, people are really overwhelmed by it. At the same time, they discount it because they know even the most personalized email probably was automatically generated. But what they don't realize can be automatically generated are handwritten notes. So that's why we started doing this. And what we find is these notes not only have a higher open rate of about 3 times compared to a standard printed envelope, they have a very, very high read rate and then a high retention rate, meaning people hold on to these. They put them on display, whether it's on the refrigerator, on their bookshelf, or on their piano, wherever that might be. And, so it's brand marketing or retention that you just can't get otherwise. The example I always give is we have a piano tuner in the United States. He comes to your house, tunes your piano once a year. We've tied into his CRM system. So after every piano tuning, he automatically sends a handwritten note, just thanking for the opportunity to enter their home and tune their piano. And then he doesn't hear from them for a year. But when he goes back to their house a year later, that handwritten note is often standing up on the piano. So not only is it open and read, but it's kept on display on the most expensive thing in their house and the most fancy room of the house for a year. And that is not marketing or advertising or whatever you want to call it that you can do with anything else. Nobody would ever take one of my text messages and print it out and stick to the piano, So it's a very unique form of communication from that perspective.
So I love the concept because I do handwritten notes, but exactly to your point, after the second letter, my writing is illegible. I literally can't read what I've read. So it's just the thought, and I've had to throw away a whole bunch of letters because I made a mistake. So obviously having something like this is great. And the second concept that I love is that personalization. You mentioned nobody's going to print out a SMS or a text message or a tweet unless it was the first tweet which sold for millions of dollars as an NFT. So you might be missing a business opportunity there. But that personalization, going back to something tactile, as you said, people keep it. And how many letters, handwritten letters, do people get now anyway? Probably not many.
2 to 3 a month, tops, versus receiving 135 emails a day or thousands of texts a month. Do you want to be in that pile of 135 or the pile of 2 a month? I'm not saying you shouldn't be in both piles. You need to be in all piles. But this is a way to kind of differentiate that being in the other piles doesn't allow you to do.
So you mentioned a piano tuner. That's a very small scale business. Talk to me about companies that are using, for example, integrations like Salesforce to actually use your type of products. That sounds quite sexy to me.
Yeah. So, we have integrations, Salesforce, HubSpot, Shopify, Zapier, which is a very popular one. So it really kind of runs the gamut. A high-end luxury handbag company, Italian leather-made handbags. If you go into their store in the United States and you buy a handbag, you will then get a handwritten note afterwards thanking you for your purchase. It'll have, "Dear Nicholas, thanks so much for coming in for your purchase," kind of a templated note. And at the bottom, it'll say, respectfully, Becky Jones, the store, and her phone number. So it'll say, the Scottsdale Fashion Square store of this brand, and then the whole phone number. So we personalize your name, the product category you bought. It just says, "Thanks for coming in and purchasing your handbag." And then it has the name of the clerk and their phone number and the store location. And all of that put together creates a very personal looking handwritten note that they're doing in the tens of thousands. So that's an example. And that's just taking a feed from their POS system, their point of sale system. We take that in through SFTP and then we parse it and then we do it that way. Salesforce tends not to have the same high volumes because it's individual sales people sending out a note here, a note there, but we can certainly do notes in batch through that and send to everybody. And then we can also do some really great permissioning. So if you have a big team of 100 people and you want these people to be able to send gift cards and the rest of them not to be able to send gift cards or what have you, we can permission all that. So the Salesforce plugin, we put a lot of effort into making a truly terrific plugin there. And then obviously Shopify, you can set up rules. So on your first purchase, on your anniversary purchase, after you spend a certain amount of money or you buy a certain number of times, there's all these rules you can create, abandoned shopping carts to trigger the sending of handwritten notes. So we're very proud of that integration too. But, it's really, we're just here to provide this additional touch point regardless of how you get the data.
So people have got to really think about where in the customer journey this fits in. So obviously this is not necessarily a cheap exercise, but I suppose it costs the same as a click on a Google ad at $1, $5, et cetera, et cetera. So if you are aiming at high value customers who appreciate that high touch experience, this is definitely a space that folks should be looking at. And you mentioned the high-end bags, probably doctors don't need it. Yeah. But anyone that has got sort of some direct relationship with you, this is a great way just to engage and make sure they read your message, because emails, like you say, you just scan through it and everything's written by AI now anyway. So we know that those emails are coming, templates and written by email. Let's go into sales. So this must have been an interesting, or not a tough sell necessarily in the beginning, but I mean, to start a business like this and scale it, you must go through quite a lot of pains.
We do. Yeah. We buy pens by the thousands and we actually have a direct relationship with Pilot now. But yeah, we go through a lot of pens. We had to build our own robot. So that when we initially started, we were using an off the shelf machine, which did not, the writing quality wasn't great and the integration into our systems just wasn't there. So now we have these robots, 175 plus of them. And not only is it about the writing, but it's about each robot has a camera over it and it does a QA check using computer vision to ensure what was written matches what was supposed to be written. We also make sure it's written on the right cardstock. And now we're putting a lot of effort into pairing that up 100% with the envelope. because, right now we have people set up to QA the card, QA the envelope and stuff them, but when they're doing hundreds of thousands, a million a year, there's always a few screw ups. So we've come up with a new process that virtually eliminates this risk entirely, which is always bigger around the holidays, unfortunately, because we have to bring in outside workers to help us with all the orders, and they just don't have the same level of care that our internal staff does. So now we have a new system that's a complete robotic process for matching card to envelope 100% of the time. So that's where a lot of the efforts have gone. So it's very interesting, as you grow, you just create more problems for yourself. And that's what we're seeing here. It's just, there's always a new problem to conquer. It's been an interesting process for sure.
It sounds like you're in the tech business as much as, or in the AI and machine learning business as much as you are in the letter writing business.
Very much so. So we use AI a few ways. You can, for over a year now, you can go on our website and we have ChatGPT built in if you don't know what to write, and it'll craft the perfect note for you. Then there's the AI computer vision system, which is a QA process. And then the third way is in the writing. We actually use AI to bend and twist the letters just a little bit, just to give it a more unique look. In addition to other just good programming we use to make that writing look really real. So yeah, I didn't realize how complicated this business would be when I started it, but it's orders of magnitude more complicated than sending text messages, which has its own, there you're worried about sending 1 million messages a day, which creates its own problems. So here it's more couple thousand, tens of thousands a day versus 1 million. So completely different problems.
Now, I've got to ask, cursive or block letters?
Do I do, or does the robot?
No, I mean, what is the preferred style? Does anyone read cursive anymore? Because my kids don't learn cursive at school. They only learn single letters. Have you done any research in terms of can people actually read what you're sending to them?
I would say more often than not, it's stylized block, or it's kind of an amalgam that, because we take people's handwriting samples and create new fonts. A lot of the times it's, most of it's script, but there's a few letters there that are just block. I prefer the script stuff. People can't write it, but they can read it typically. So, that's been interesting. And all the little variations we have to do, how do you connect two O's? How do you cross two T's next to each other? To use one crossbar or two, all those little variances and nuances we take into account with our handwriting. And then, of course, people started putting emojis in their notes, and we had to start making penned versions of emojis and all that. So, originally they're putting colon parenthesis for a sideways smiley face, but nobody writes that. You never write a colon parenthesis. So we had to take all that into account. We're constantly doing that. But as far as use cases, the number one use case is really thank you notes. So it's more about retention, upselling, customer experience, not so much about prospecting. It's just too expensive for prospecting, unless you're doing some super high value item where you just have to sell, like your solar panels on roofs or something like that, then it might make sense. So very much so, it's about a few touch points a year. It's a thank you note. It's a birthday card. It's a holiday card, and maybe one offer to existing customers. And that's it. You're talking getting in front of these people once a quarter.
Yeah. So this from a marketing perspective, when looking at the customer journey, and I love customer journeys. So I'll mention that at least once an episode.
Yeah.
But you really need to know your customer lifetime value. You really need to know the cost per impression and things like that. You need to understand your customer life value, how much you can spend on sending out these letters. So like you said, for certain businesses, you might be able to send on anniversaries, birthdays, cats' birthdays, etc. And others, it will just be once a year saying thank you for buying a hat. Do you get involved in any of that strategy talk with your background in the SMS game?
A little bit. Now it's not so much me as it is my team, but I wish we did more of it. But given the price point of where a product is, it's a thin margin business, so we don't have a lot of time to run around providing consulting services that nobody's willing to pay for. From you, they never. So we do our best to provide guidance. People want to do full letters. We'll say, we can do it, but nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to believe it. Do a short card, that type of thing. And we will provide examples. We've created a few thought leadership pieces. We did a survey of 2,000 consumers a few years ago just to get their preference on communication type, whether it's email, text, handwritten note from brands. So we do try to provide some of that thought leadership, but it's hard for us to get people just don't come to us with that. We now have a QR code generator, and this is actually way more complicated than it sounds, but it's because we write the note separately from the envelope, and there's no window, on your typical junk mail piece. Everything's printed on the letter. It's folded and put in an envelope with the window on it. So there's no matching, but we do all this matching and all this other crazy stuff. And so now we do QR codes, and it was actually quite a big process, but now we'll know if I send Nicholas a card and he scans his QR code versus somebody else somewhere else, they scan theirs. We'll be able to track all that and kind of get in the middle of the analysis a little bit, but we don't typically get too far into the analysis or guidance for our clients.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose it's not like you can get a red receipt from a hand-delivered envelope.
But I will tell you an interesting use case, because you're into the customer journey. We have a snack box company. They send a subscription to your office with nuts and crackers and that type of thing. When they screw up those snacks, whether they don't deliver it on time or deliver the wrong snacks, whatever it is, they send a follow-up box of snacks and they include a handwritten apology note in that box. What they found is the customers that received that apology note and snacks, obviously, had a higher lifetime value than those that were never screwed up with in the first place. So then the natural solution is screw up with everybody, send everybody the win back, and raise all tides. So that's what they're doing.
That's marketing 101 activity right there. And it's a great example. You can fix a snafu, and it gives you another opportunity to engage with the customer, which you otherwise wouldn't have had. So that's great. When you started out of this business, this sounds like a bit of a bootstrap business. I don't know what your vision was to write 1 million letters a year or 1 million letters a month. How do you start a business like this? And how do you say, well, I'm going to make the post office love me again. We're going to have to get them making postmarks again, and get the paper companies back in business. Because I love paper. I started out in printing in an advertising agency. So I love paper. And I know all the colors and all the stocks and that. So I can feel if it's a cheap ass paper or, let's just say a good cotton weave or something. But talk to me about your thought process of starting this business after coming from the SMS business or text business.
What happened was I used to, I lived in Chicago. My parents are in Arizona. I would want to send them a birthday card for their birthday, and I'd go to the drugstore, the Walgreens, buy the birthday card, not have stamps, put the birthday card in my laptop bag, and it would just sit there, for a year until it was so banged up, I threw it away. When I sold the last company, I sent handwritten notes, actual handwritten notes, to my employees and to my best clients. And it was a very time consuming and painful experience, but very worthwhile to me, and I think to them. And I thought, gee, there has to be a better way. And that's where it came from. It really came from something that I wanted. I wanted a service where I can include my business card. I can include a gift card. I could do it all automatically on a website and upload a spreadsheet. So it all kind of came from my own need without a lot of market analysis behind it. I didn't survey, I didn't get stuck in the analysis paralysis trap, for better or worse. What ends up happening is you end up creating a spaghetti business that's more complicated than you would ever know. A perfect example of that is gift cards. So I wanted to offer the ability to include a gift card to Starbucks or a Visa card or whatever. And we started doing that. And then you end up with corruption, people money laundering through handwritten.com or websites. You end up with big runs on gift cards where you have to get tons of plastic in the door right away because somebody places a 200 card order at 2,000 card order. It just creates all these additional kind of unintended consequences, which have been interesting to solve, but it's an ongoing, this is something that we're constantly dealing with here.
So you mentioned Chicago. Has this is obviously expanded across the States. Have you had any international orders or any international interest in this?
Yeah. So we've done quite a number of orders for Australia. We actually have a drop box in Toronto, Canada. So what we'll do is we have Canadian postage here. We'll write the note, if it has a recipient address of Canada and a sender address of Canada, we'll write it. It won't say Canada on the envelope because you'd only do that if you're writing internationally. We'll put a Canadian stamp on it. We'll ship it to Canada and then they'll drop it in the mail. And it's literally just, they take it out of the box and they drop it in the mail. It was cheaper for us to do that than to open up a second location in Canada. And we're probably going to replicate that for the UK and potentially other parts in Europe as well. But fulfilling it centrally and then distributing it for distribution in the mail, kind of at the edge.
So America is manufacturing again and exporting. I love it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's very much a manufactured product. I mean, some of these notes end to end take 6 or 7 minutes because you got to print it, cut it, write it, stuff it, stamp it, mail it.
So what's next? You've mentioned that you are not going to be opening offices in other countries, drop shipping. What sort of number have you got in your head? What does success look like for you at the end of this year? How do you expand this letter writing to larger markets over the next 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly want to increase the volume. I mean, right now, I think we'll do a couple million this year. I'd have to look. I haven't even looked recently. A couple million notes this year. As far as a product mix, the feature set is pretty much done. Right now, you can create a custom flat card and a folded card on the website, but they're both landscape. So we're going to add portrait. So it's these little additional things we're going to add in, but we're going to add some multi-user access management, reporting on that and all that. But for the most part, our feature set is complete. And now it's just about reducing costs in the process, increasing throughput, building more robots, leasing these robots out to third-party logistics centers. So right now we have about 24 robots in the field, and we're trying to grow that business too. But it's kind of a mature business at this point. I just need to get really good, smart salespeople in the door to sell it.
Absolutely. David, where can I send folks to go and try out their own handwritten letters?
Please send them to handwritten.com, HANDWRYTTEN. And then if you click business at the top, you can request free samples and see for yourself how authentic this looks.
My last question is, how happy have you made the paper suppliers of these interesting stock that you made?
They're a lot bigger print companies than us. I think we make the post office really happy. They now know us when we come and drop off our boxes of mail. It's funny, sometimes a lot of the bulk mailers out there, they don't put real stamps on. They either do a pre-sorted first class stamp, which is a different type of stamp, or they do metered mail or something like that. We come in and we want to buy 40,000 stamps at a time. This big central post office is scrounging. So it's interesting from that perspective because we have to use certain rolls of stamps. I think the post office is very happy, but quite frankly, it's a risk for our business too, because postage rates keep going up and it's frightening. But yeah, it's paper. I don't think we're making a dent in, but postage, yeah, they're happy to see us.
I hope you've got healthcare for your staff in terms of licking all their stamps, because I mean, they're going to have dry tongues and cut lips after 40,000 stamps.
Luckily, we have a robot for that too.
David, it's been great chatting. And yeah, I would encourage folks to check out your website and get some of those free samples and look at how it can tie into your customer journey and get some real personalization in an era when people are just getting spammed on email.
Thank you very much, Nicholas.